Welcome to the Bridge podcast, the crossover to freedom. The Bridge is where we believe in the missing ingredient. It's not cultural, it's not finances, it's information. I'm your host, Cruz Gomez, and this is episode 3, Placing the Vision in Motion. Today, we want to talk about a subject that we've all seen. A company spends months crafting a beautiful mission statement, prints it on office walls, and then nothing changes. The day-to-day grind remains exactly the same. The hardest part of leadership isn't the vision, it's the friction of the first step. It's the messy, complicated process of taking a high-level strategy and putting it into actual physical motion. Today, we're joined by Blaise Menzoni, Mortgage One Corp, and what I call a serial entrepreneur. He has built a reputation for not just seeing the future, but building the bridge to get there. We are also joined by one of my business partners, PJ Ragone of ETP Consulting. Blaise has a string of successful businesses, and PJ Ragone is an upstart business that is building and ready to hit the ground running in 2026. Today, we're going to deconstruct how to move from what if to what is. Blaise, welcome to the show. If you could take a few minutes and just let people know what you're doing nowadays.
Yeah, Cruz, thanks for inviting me. We've spoke about this personally so much that this is something that really hits home to me, right? I've been fortunate enough to make a great career in my community here in Cumberland County. And, I feel that it's my duty to give back. And more than my duty, it's something that really, really drives me and I'm passionate about. So, when you'd asked me to come in here, I love pouring back into the community. It's helped me so much.
Awesome.
As far as what I'm doing, it's a whole bunch of everything. I'll always be the mortgage guy. So, when people think of my name, I always want them to think Blaise Menzoni, Nation One Mortgage. That's really what's gotten me to where I am. But as you said, I've been involved in a number of other businesses throughout the years. I was partners with Tim Chu in the credit card processing company. Bought, flipped, and sold, new build, about well over 100 projects at this point. I've got Taste of Earth, the dispensary, which is doing great. But, I'm a mortgage guy at heart. I always want to be associated with that. And, within the mortgage field, I've really seen how, poorly financial education has been implemented in this county.
Absolutely.
And, we see it day to day. So aside from wanting to help the area that I've grown up in, that I live in, that I love and care about, and pour back into these people selfishly for myself, right? The more I could educate these people, the easier my job is to help them once they're ready to buy houses. So, it kind of just plays into the whole aerial 360 view of what we want to do.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for joining us too.
No, thanks for having me.
Pleasure. PJ, what are you up to nowadays?
Oh man, I'm trying to build. I'm in a building phase. So I had a job. I worked for the hospital for 20 years, and within the last year that changed. So I had to decide, what do I want to do? Do I want to get another job? Do I want to go to another hospital system, or do I want to start and do my own thing? And what's funny is I always had this vision, and I'm going to talk a little bit later about chasing a dream versus chasing a process. But I always thought by 40 I wanted to be a consultant, and I didn't know exactly what I wanted to consult. That kept changing; it was fluid. But I'm 43, and I had my chance to be a consultant. And where I kind of landed on is injury prevention and safety. So going into companies that do a lot of manual labor, like industrial settings where the movements are repetitive. It's a lot of heavy lifting and twisting and turning and carrying. Listen, everybody is gonna get injured at some point in time. It's not if, it's when, and it's how bad. And the older we get, the more susceptible we are to it. So quality of life, really, a piece of it is going to be, how do I feel every day, right? So we have to be able to earn money, but to earn money and to work, it's helpful if we feel good and to have a good family life. And, you got to be healthy. You don't want to have all these pains and strains. So what my passion is I train athletes. I've always done that, but now I want to go in and I want to train what I call the industrial athlete, which is that individual, like I said, that works in an industrial setting. So I'm kind of setting my sights on going in and helping prevent injury in those situations. And ultimately it's going to save time and money for the employer. It's going to increase productivity. But what really drives me is being able to give a better quality of life. Just like Blaise wants to be able to educate on finances to give a better quality of life, I want to do the same thing, in the health sector and use that opportunity to enhance their life as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Right here at the Bridge, we always want to set up an established business, and then PJ is going to be representing the upstart business, right? He has a great idea, but how does he get that into motion? God has given him a dream, but how does he get that into motion? So Blaise, let's jump right into it, right? We're gonna bridge the gap this morning. Why do so many brilliant businesses visions die in the boardroom before they ever hit the floor?
That's probably the easiest question you'll ask me today, I guess, right? Because it's hard. It's a very difficult task to take a vision in your brain that's brilliantly worked out and laid out. It's just so clear to you, and then implement it, right? And, listen, I've had my fair share of businesses that haven't worked, right? So, I've been fortunate enough to be able to execute every one of them. And more of them have won than not, right? But I've had some losers. So you got to basically be willing to really look yourself in the mirror and say, I'm ready to take this chance. And the more planning you do before, the better that chance is. But the one thing I can guarantee, and PJ, I'm sure you see this, starting your business, you can plan all day, every day, but there's going to be curveballs and unexpected stuff that comes up that really you just got to roll with the punches, right? Being an entrepreneur is so being reactive, right? I mean, you want to be proactive and you plan, but as proactive as you plan to be, you have to also be reactive, because life is going to throw you situations professionally, personally, that you're not ready for. And, somebody once told me that, life is 10% what happens to you, 90% how you handle it. Mm-hmm. And personally, professionally, I think that rings so true, right? So, getting off topic here, but to get back to the question at hand is a lot of businesses don't make it past that vision on the boardroom because it's hard to implement it. You have to be dedicated. You have to take every step. You have to be willing to get knocked down and get back up and just keep doing right. And if it's really what you believe in and you're passionate about, it'll see its way through. Sometimes it takes days, sometimes it takes weeks, months, years. But if the passion is there and you really care, it'll work.
Awesome. Amazing. Right, PJ? Right? I know there's been times when you wanted to give up on this business, right? What does that sound like on Monday mornings when things are not moving, right?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing I've had to adjust to is not necessarily like someone saying no, but like not just jumping all over, like, yes, this is what I've been waiting for. Like, you're the guy I've been waiting for. This is the system I've been waiting for. Like, come, let's start tomorrow. Right. So it's, going and trying to explain to people, that this is something that they need, when, yeah, up front, it's an extra cost for them, but ultimately it's going to save them money. But like, where's my data? Right. Like, I can give you national data on a program like this and how it saves, but like, where's ETP's data? Right. So it's getting someone to buy into, to buy into me and give me a chance.
Awesome.
So like, how do I wake up every day and be like, today's the day I'm going to get that chance? And to me, it's staying committed to the process rather than chasing after, the goal or the dream of, having this successful consulting business. So like, there's some, like, one question I wanted to ask Blaise, if it's cool, if I can just jump into a question. Like, you started something where like somebody had to buy into you, right? There's lots of places you can go to get a mortgage. Like, why am I coming to Blaise Menzoni to get a mortgage when this is you haven't even done a mortgage yet? Like, let's transport all the way back, right? I know you started this young, but still you had to have your first client at some point in time, right? So like standing out, like, how did you differentiate yourself, or how did you allow yourself to stand out and to get that opportunity and have somebody trust you that you could, perform for them?
All right. So I ironically remember my first client. Luckily for me, it was my dad's secretary. She needed to buy a house, and I just became a mortgage guy. So she didn't shop me. She had no choice but to trust me. So my first one was kind of easy because, I had a built-in client who already trusted me because they had known me for 15 years, whatever it was. And she knew that, I maybe didn't know much about mortgages at that time, but she knew that I was going to have her best interest at heart. So my first one was kind of an easy one. The second one was a little harder, right? Because that one was one that I had to go get on my own. And, I could tell you, I chose to build my business a little more organically than a lot of people. I was very fortunate. I mean, I worked for a company that had a great local reputation that we ultimately ended up taking over. When I went out and knocked on realtors' doors and said that I worked for Mark Goldberg at Gateway Funding, I had a little bit more clout than the average guy because Mark had been doing it since the early 90s in the area and had a great reputation. So that definitely gave me a huge advantage. But it was just a long, arduous process, right? I mean, and constantly under promising and over delivering, right? And it was like, I tell people all the time, I'm a lousy salesperson. I'm honest, but you know what? It works.
Yeah.
Like, I'm never going to come from a position of, I need this deal to close. I'm never worried about the financial gain that I stand to get from closing a client. It's just kind of focusing on doing the right thing. And listen, it probably took me a little longer to build my business than a lot of guys in my industry. My trajectory started a little slower, but once I hit that point, it was just rocket, and I think it's because of how I chose to do it. Now, listen, luckily I was 22 years old, living at my parents' house, didn't have any bills. So it was a little easier for me to take that slow approach, right? Even at the event we had talked about a foundation and, building a house, right? The foundation is the first thing you build. And if that house isn't built in a strong foundation, it's never going to stand good, right? So I think back to 22 years ago, I was digging a hole and laying block.
Right.
And, most guys could do a basement in 2 weeks, right? I chose to do it in 2 months, maybe 3 months, because I wanted it to be solid. And I think that placed with I have a drive that's like no other, just go, 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 go. And I usually don't get too tired. It kind of got me to where I'm at. But, honestly, under promising and over delivering is huge, especially in my business. Like you said, there's a million people that do mortgages.
Right.
And now 22 years later, right, I'm the trusted guy. And when realtors see my pre-approval, they know that we've done the due diligence, that we're not throwing some you-know-what on the wall and hoping that it sticks. That, hey, if Blaise said that loan is going to close on the 30th, it's going to close on the 30th. And if there are issues, he's going to communicate it clearly without any salesman BS. It's going to be a clear, concise message of where we are, what we need to do to get to where we want to be.
Yeah. Wow. Awesome. Right. So Blaise represents that 22-year-old that found his love right away. Right.
Yeah, luckily.
Now, luckily. Right. And it happens with young entrepreneurs. And that's who we're hoping to reach is the people that can reach their dream right away. But PJ represents the guy who had a career and was forced to go into business. Right. PJ, share with us what made you go into business.
Yeah. Well, I was asked to leave my job, right? So, I worked for Inspira and I ran a gym, the fitness center for them for, a long time. And I decided I wanted to, that opportunity was kind of, it was kind of stale and it wasn't going to go anywhere. The trajectory was kind of as far as it was going to go. So I wanted to do something different. So I created this sports medicine department. And, unfortunately it just never took off at Inspira just because it's fluid when you're working for a huge healthcare system like that of what direction they want to go. CEO changed, direction changed. And they ultimately, they had to make some business decisions, some financial decisions. And one was cutting my department, my program. So I knew when I started that there was a potential. So, they said, listen, we're willing to give you another job in the system, because it wasn't because they didn't like me or I wasn't performing. It was just that it just didn't fit what the mission was going to go going forward. And I had to make a decision. Do I want to just stay and work, there and do something I don't love, or do I want to, take a shot? And and they took care of me. They gave me some, gave me a severance to give me some time to build this business, but. It doesn't happen right away. It's not, I didn't hit the ground running. And I thought I was doing really well because I created a website and I had all the preparation work was done. And now it's all right, well, now somebody's got to hire you.
Absolutely.
And, that's what's proven to take a little bit longer. But, if I'm only going to base my success on, how much money am I making in the first 6 months, I'm probably setting myself up for failure, like Blaise just said. I mean, it's not gonna happen that quickly. But I was forced to make a decision, and I left the comfort to take a shot where now I don't have a ceiling. I can earn for my family, and I can make impact in the community and in people's lives. And it's going to be based on, the work that I put in. And, I think that, I'll take that bet. I'll bet on myself.
Absolutely. Awesome. Right. So now we have to leave. There's so many businesses to getting started, especially the new year. And they're in this strategy phase, right? Everybody's strategizing. Let's go. Right. But I believe this is the time to execute, right? There's an execution phase that we need to go into now. With that being said, Blaise, execution often requires saying no, right? To some things, to other things. What did you have to stop doing to make room for the new vision?
All right. So I'm going back, right? So for me, it was saying no to a lot of things that most people want to say yes to, 5:00 Friday, 22 years old, 23 years old. Everybody's going to happy hour, planning their weekend. Yeah. And I'm like, listen, guys, I'm going to, nothing personal, love y'all, but I'm going to stay at the office the next couple of hours. Or Saturday morning, I got to come in and reach out to some clients or come up with a game plan for the following week. So for me, it was saying no to a lot of life's enjoyable moments, right? That I listened to. I'm not trying to sound like I never did anything, right?
Correct.
I had a good life, but there was a lot of times where, all the guys were going and doing this, and it was pre-kids and pre-weddings and wives, girlfriends, serious relationships, and life was kind of happy-go-lucky, and a lot of times I chose to just hunker down and get some work done as opposed to do the fun thing, and it worked out. Sometimes telling your kids no to something that you wanted to do with them because you had a commitment for work, and that was a tough one. And at the time, I was luckily when my kids were young, I was married, and my now ex-wife was great with the kids and always supported that.
Awesome.
But it's literally saying no to yourself a lot, to those, guilty pleasures that we all deserve. But to me, it was like, all right, if I could just get through this now, right, and then put in the work now, I think later I'll have a little more freedom. And now that later's here, I could say that that's happened.
Awesome.
I find myself now just probably working more and trying to grow more and do more, but that's just who I am. Everyone's like, wow, you could probably retire. I'm like, first of all, I don't think I'll ever retire.
Do what?
Right. I'd be so bored. Yeah. Even if money was not an object and I was financially free where I could play golf every day and travel and live a life like I want to live without working, I think I would still work. I might turn the intensity down a little bit. Mm-hmm. I might try to grow and bring some more people under me, but it's just making little sacrifices for the big goal, I think, would be the easiest answer to that question.
Beautiful. Yeah. Right. And I think all of us sitting at this table we all have a lot of goals, right? We all have high level goals. Our time is separated in so many different angles, right? I think we can all answer this question. So let's take a little time, right? And we'll start with you, PJ, because I think you've been amazing in my life with this, right? With so many high level goals, right? How do you break that down into simple daily micro habits?
Yeah. So I read this book that was really good, and it was about like behavior change and being able to to set goals for yourself and understanding what a goal is versus what a system is, and taking small wins and making that something that is tangible that you can touch. So as I'm trying to build, right, like if I don't have a client yet, what I can do is give myself a win by saying, well, I reached out to 5 prospects. So something that I did was I got a mason jar, and a bunch of marbles. So every time I reached out to a potential client, whether it was LinkedIn or an email, or I went and visited just a business, I put a marble in the jar. So to me, it was tangible that I could see that, okay, today you did something to take a step to get closer to your building your business and having it be successful. So in the beginning, every time I dropped the marble, I would hear ding, ding, right? But once I got a nice bed of marbles, now it was a different sound when I dropped the marble in. So it kind of gave me something that I can tangibly see and look forward to. Kind of like, making an X on a calendar, or, I've been a trainer for the last 20 years and trying to get people to be consistent with their exercise program or their nutrition or whatever. You have to hold yourself accountable by something you can see and touch. Right. So that was the strategy I've taken to be able to like not have it be like just some kind of ambiguous thing. Like, yeah, I think maybe last week I reached out to somebody. this gave me a way to know for sure that I did.
Awesome. So you're a visual guy. You have to see it.
I'm absolutely very visual.
Please.
100%. So for me, I'm a checklist dude, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes at night, like on a Sunday night, I know I got to, especially after this holiday weekend, I was in bed writing down a list of things that I have to do today. And there's nothing to me more relieving than putting a big old X right through that thing that I had to do. It's like, all right, I've accomplished that. And for me, it's weirdly, but physically seeing it, right? So me and my assistant, Justine, have a system, right? When a new deal comes in, and every morning I wake up to, when I get in the office, there's 2 lists for me, right? People that have submitted their docs that are pre-approved and need me to go over those scenarios. And then there's the next list of people who have already been under contract and now are ready to talk to me about disclosing their loan, right? So I have those 2 lists, and that's my immediate thing that I start tackling every day. And the first cross off there, it's like, feels good, all right, I've done something today. And then sometimes during the day, right, somebody might submit their documents in for a pre-approval. So Justine will send an email saying, file ready. So I know that I now have to reach out to that person as well. So sometimes just based on that email, if I have the chance, I'll pick up the phone and call them right away. I'll still then write their name down on the list and then cross it out. That's how much of a habit that I've made that. Now, that's a waste of about 10 seconds of my day because I've already done that task.
Absolutely.
But at the end of the day, when I've looked at that sheet and I've seen everything that I needed to do that was etched out that morning, a few little add-ons that came through the day and I tackled them all, whether it's 5 p.m. or 8 p.m. when I'm walking out of those doors, I'm like, all right, mission accomplished today, So similar to you, it's like, I'm a list guy. Everybody has their own thing that might work for them. I love the Marvel thing, dude. I love that.
That's awesome. And I do both, right? But I've been able to implement a spiritual end to this, right? Aside to this, because what I was doing wrong was I was strategizing behind closed doors. Yep. Right. So I know that God opens up doors for me. So in the mornings I wake up and I ask myself, I say, listen, what doors has God opened for me? And they're the ones I run through in the morning. So I've added that side of it because I was getting tired strategizing behind closed doors that I wanted to open in business. But I do the checklist thing. That's the only way to control a busy life, especially when you have so many businesses that you have to pay that need your attention.
Right.
That need your attention, right? So I love that, right? So PJ, right? What issues have you encountered in realigning your budget and talent to support a vision, right?
Yeah. So, the budget's a big one. We've talked about this a lot since, we became business partners. I never had one. I never budgeted. And it's not because I had so much money that I didn't know what to do with it. I just didn't have that desire, I guess, to budget because I always thought like I'm earning, right? So money's coming in. So like I knew like to an extent, like, all right, you can't go pay cash for, a brand new car, or I couldn't buy my home, without getting a mortgage. But like I had a wife that, makes a good income, and now she's carrying us. So like the biggest change is there's a couple things, right? So I'll get a little bit personal about how it makes me feel as a man, a husband, and a father, where like I feel like that I'm not providing right now because I'm not, so that's a struggle for me because that's my job, right? That's our job as men is to be the provider. But when you're not doing it, I'm blessed to have a wife that is doing it. But like, my faith in God and trust in Christ has really allowed me to say like, put that away because that's ego. Like you need to be humbled. I felt like, that this all happened because I needed to be humbled, in certain ways. So I had to change because now I can't just go and buy everything that I want to buy when I want to buy it. I have to think a little bit more about what am I buying and do I really need it? So a need versus a want. Really like saying if I like this certain kind of scotch, right, and I like to have a glass of scotch at night. Well, you can't buy $100 bottle of scotch right now because that's you're being you have to be more judicious. You're being selfish in that and irresponsible. So like those are the biggest changes and you've helped me with that is like really looking at like what's coming in, what's going out, where does it need to go, and putting out these different line items. I've never done that before. I didn't know how many subscriptions I had, or like I didn't know how much I spent on, going out to eat or whatever it may be. So that's where I had to, stretch myself. And what it's done for me is that weakness is starting to become a strength and a talent, where now I'm getting more into the financial literacy and financial foundations, where I want to partner with you guys to teach that and kind of marry finances and health, which is what my background is. And it's not so much of a stretch as it would have been a couple of years ago, because I've been forced to pay attention to it.
Awesome. And PJ, even we had briefly talked about before, right? It's all health. You have financial health and physical health. Mm-hmm. And, I've said this before. I mean, if you don't have your health, you really don't have anything,
right.
And that's mainly physical, but it also falls back to financial. Absolutely. And, especially physical, there's disease and ailments that we can't control, genetically predisposed to, but taking the steps to live a healthy life financially, physically, religiously, spiritually, absolutely. All those things really do kind of just all roll up to what it's about,
Absolutely.
And that's impact, right? Like, I
100%.
think that's the one thing all three of us could say is money aside, it's impact. It's how are you impacting your community? Like, that's why you're still here, Blaise, right? Like, you could live anywhere you want, really, right now, right? 100%. But you stay in Cumberland County because you want to have impact. Like, Cruz, you can go anywhere you want, but you stay here because you want to have impact.
Absolutely.
And God placed us where He placed us for that purpose. And I think, pushing each other into that, encouraging each other and being accountable to one another as a group, is helpful for that.
Absolutely. Yep. So moving forward, right, Blaise, we have a bunch of business owners that are saying, all right, I have a vision, I have a job, right? Which we should be thinking the job is the thing that's going to get me to the thing, right? So we have some businesses that are emotionally stepping out of their job and going into business without keeping that revenue, right? PJ was forced to do that, but there's some people that are deciding to do that. How important is it not to put too much financial weight on a small business?
So, I think it's super important, right? And it goes back to having a plan. So, PJ, you were kind of, like we said, forced into this, but the people that are consciously making a choice need to realize, hey, if I'm going to lose this steady Eddie paycheck, but I have this dream that I want to chase financially for whatever reason your reason might be, right? You need to plan first. You can't just wake up one day without saving any money, without having some type of financial means from point A to point B, right? And because if you do that, you're going to fail. You could be Bill Gates, you could be Jeff Bezos, you could be Mark Zuckerberg. You got to have that plan to get you from where you are today to where you want to be. And listen, that plan might change 27 times in your journey, but if you don't start out with some type of plan and basic concept, it's probably not going to work. And you could have the best idea in the world, but if Jeff Bezos didn't have a real defined plan when he wanted to start selling books on the internet, right? Yeah. Really, that's what it boils down. That's where he started. Mm-hmm. And then look what it rolled into, right? So it comes from a plan and then execution, right? So as long as your plan is there and you've built that foundation, and before you take that leap of faith to start, you have that little nest egg and that goal and all the little back-end homework's been done, I would venture to say that increases your chance of success by a number that I couldn't even figure out.
So what you're saying is that we need to have some type of money put away to pour into our own vision before somebody else does.
A rainy day fund, right? Because PJ, as you said it, right? Even me, it took me a long time to get successful in the mortgage business, years, Yeah. And if you don't have some type of financial plan to support that, whether it's money saved, thank God, a spouse with a good income, if there's no, bridge to get you from point A to point B, you're going to end up in the water drowning more than likely. Even if you end up in the water, it doesn't mean you're going to drown. It's easier to walk the bridge. You're going to paddle a lot harder. You might have to back float and just lay for a little bit to get some energy. It's going to make whatever your goal is more difficult. Now, I will tell you, sometimes the more adversity you face, the sweeter success becomes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I've definitely come up against some adversity. But you just put your head down and
Yeah. So
motor through it, dude.
yep. So the financial strain doesn't collapse the business, but
Right.
it makes it takes a lot longer.
It makes it
take a
hard.
lot longer.
But if you've got some type of plan to alleviate that, it will. I mean, I've never done the numbers, but I'm sure that the people who have planned financially to start their business versus the people who have only planned about the operation of that business, what it's going to look like, their dream. And if both of those people start, the one with the real plan who saved and did the work prior to starting, compared to the one who just dreamed about it and never really put the pen to the paper, did the work, created that budget, saved some money, I would guarantee you that the success rate is, astronomically different.
Yep. Yeah, it's crazy because the Bible tells me, right, that a builder is foolish if he doesn't calculate the cost. Right. So you can build, but if you don't calculate the cost, then people are just going to laugh at you. And that's why people are laughing at entrepreneurs, because they haven't calculated the cost. Right. Sometimes it's better off just waiting back a little bit and saying, let me keep this job because it's the thing that's going to get me the thing. Like my tax office. Like that's not my thing. That's not my purpose, but it's the thing that gets me to the thing. It brings revenue from January to April, and I'm able to invest in my in my dream, in my impactful businesses.
Right.
So, right, me and PJ and I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, right? How does financial shortcuts, right? Because a lot of people want to take financial shortcuts, hurt the business in the long run.
Well, I mean, I don't think there is a such thing as a financial shortcut,
Like, how do you fake finances?
You can't. You either have it or you don't,
They're
right?
coming out.
Yeah, I mean, listen, right? You could fake the funk, you could max out credit cards, but eventually you got to pay the piper.
Well, that's how you do it, right? Is that what you like? Your credit cards,
credit cards, personal loans,
Yeah.
just biting off more than you could chew. Where, listen, I know it sounds weird, but like baby steps. I remember What About Bob? Remember that movie back in the day? But
Bill
baby
Murray,
steps,
yeah.
Bill Murray was great, right?
Mhm.
But truly, baby steps are so important in everything, right? I just didn't wake up one day with multiple successful businesses. I did a little bit of this and then a little bit of that and then a little bit more of this. And, it's kind of like cooking a stew, right? You throw a little of this and you throw a little of that in. It sits on the crock pot for a long ass time. But once it's done, it's pretty good.
Absolutely. Yeah. Awesome. Anything to add on that?
Well, I mean, I agree with that because it's easy to go get some credit cards, and I even did it to a small extent. I mean, I didn't max my credit cards out, but like, all right, I got an office, right? So I need stuff to go in the office. I need a desk. I need, I wanted a table. I needed a computer screen, right? So there's some things that you gotta buy in order to set yourself up to be comfortable. Like it is an investment in yourself,
Absolutely.
right? I gave myself a loan to hire an administrative assistant to build my website and to do all my admin work. So like I was investing, in the business. But like you told me, like you looked at my finances, you say, here's what you can afford to invest.
Absolutely.
And you need to invest because why would somebody else if you don't?
Absolutely.
Right. But then the other part of it was, when you guys were saying like this small nest egg, like in my mind, I'm thinking, is it 6 months worth of your bills? Is it 1 year worth of your bills? Like, and that allows you to not have to fake it, right? Because you say, okay, like I did save up a year. So if you're making a choice to change from that job to that career or to that entrepreneurial phase, right? You don't do it until you have that number. Or if you're forced like me, right? What's the thing that I should have done prior to that was make sure that if it ever did happen, like I wasn't invincible. What made me think that I was never going to lose my job, right? That's just hubris to think that. Like, but I didn't. But like I should have been budgeting then, right? Like the emergency fund and all those types of things.
PJ, I would venture to say that 99% of the people walk into work not assuming they're ever going to lose their job.
Right.
And like you, especially when it wasn't a case of performance or your, accountability for what you were doing. It was just a change in regime and what they thought was best for that organization. And, you were unfortunately not what they thought. And I've seen that, right? I mean, even it goes back to when we worked for Finance of America, which was a huge publicly traded company. And, 2020 COVID was very good to the mortgage industry. We had super low rates for quite some time. We crushed it. And in 2022, there was no secret that rates were going up and things were closing. And by the end of the year, this company who had taken us public had over 3,000 employees, people with kids, people who have bills, people who hadn't planned, just said, oh, by the way, guys, good luck. We're closing the forward mortgage division.
Right.
And so, you could plan all you want, but sometimes life, like I said, throws you curveballs. But the more planning you've done previously, the easier it is to choke up and, get a single out of that curve.
Absolutely, yeah. So from working with the young entrepreneurs, what we've been doing is when we go to the finances of the business. So a lot of people open up businesses to get a fresh start on finances, which is the wrong thing to do. It's never a fresh start, right? So what we try to do is we try to dig into their home finances, and they're wondering, I came here for my business. Why are you digging? Because the DNA of home will always creep into your business. If you don't budget at home, you'll never budget in business. If you don't
100%.
save at home, you never save.
Listen,
And what do you have put away?
If you don't budget at home, there's not going to be a business.
Correct, right? It's not
And again, that's why I've talked about being so passionate about this financial literacy, right? Like, it's so, so, so important because, kids just aren't given the opportunity to soak this stuff up, man. Kids are sponges. If you give them the opportunity, like, hey, listen, everybody wants to be successful. Here's some really easy things you could do to be successful.
Absolutely.
That's
beautiful.
I mean, your first job, start a Roth IRA.
Yeah.
Do it. Like, it's a little thing. But if you do that and you contribute to that Roth IRA through max it out $500, max it out $7,500 a year. If you do that for 30 years, it's something like $5 million you'll have.
Absolutely.
$7,500 a year is a lot of money, but not if you plan for it properly.
Correct. Right. And I see it as just a mindset shift, right? You're putting away, you're investing in yourself so that later on you can invest in your business. Right? If you invest in yourself at home and open up that IRA, now you're saying, all right, I opened up a business. I have to invest in the business because that's the model that you used in your personal life, which is amazing. So Blaise, I don't want you to leave without digging into the venture mindset, right? You have a successful business. You say, all right, I don't have to do anything else. However, the opportunities are wide, right? How do you decide how much innovation capital to risk on a new vision?
All right, so that's a great question, right? And I am a sucker for a deal, right? And just recently, I consider myself a pretty skilled investor. I made a dumb mistake. It was a piece of property, and again, flipped over 100 houses, built probably well over 20 new construction houses at this point, and I had an opportunity to buy a duplex off market, and the house was bad. I knew it was going to need to be almost torn down. And long story short, I bought the house cash and we started working on it. We confirmed once we got in there, it had to be torn down. The contractor tore it down, got the demo permits. And now we go back to get building permits. And we went and spent money demoing it, money on architectural plans to build another duplex. And it was actually a non-conforming illegal duplex there. So now I knocked this house down. I spent $7,000 on plans to build a duplex, and I can't even build a duplex there. So you're always, and again, I'm a pretty smart guy, right? But you're always going to get thrown those little curveballs that could knock you down. I should have done more homework. I should have done the research, but it was such a good deal. I was flying by the seat of my pants, and you got caught a little bit. Now, thank God I'll be okay. For me, I don't know if there's a certain number. I talk to financial advisors and they look at me and they're like, oh, you need more money in the market. And then when I show them what I'm actually doing through the real estate, some private lending, and, like, actually, you're doing good. Like, like, it's a little untraditional, but it goes so well with what I know from the mortgage side and 22 years of doing it that for me, it's hand in hand. So all the real estate stuff is second nature. I would venture to say that I probably am usually 50% of my net worth is tied up into some type of real estate project, whether it's hard money lending, a flip I'm doing, a new construction project where I got a 16-unit development we're working on now. So I earmark a decent amount of money for that, but never enough where if one of these things goes wrong, it's going to cripple me.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Now, listen, there's been plenty of people who have made those chances and rolled the dice, and it's worked out very well, So everybody's appetite for risk is slightly different. I do find that the older I get, I'm willing to maybe take a little less risk than I did 10 years ago.
Yeah,
because now it's like, at 44, I'm like, oh man, if I lose a couple $100,000, I'm too old for that, where when I was 30, I'm like, I got so much more time to make that up. And, if I don't lose it and I triple my money, well, it was way worth it. Where now I've definitely changed mindset a little bit on some investments where I'm trying to do a little less risky stuff that I know and is more in my wheelhouse. Like I opened up a laundromat that didn't work because I don't know. I've never even used a laundromat. So but it seemed right. I had a Rita's water ice that seemed like a good deal that didn't work out. So the older I get, I just kind of stay in my lane. I had a good friend tell me, he's like, oh, you're like the doctor that makes too much money and then makes bad investments and is okay because they keep making enough money. And that was something somebody told me a long time ago. And ever since then, I've tried to really just stay in my lane.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's so key. Stay in the lane. That's amazing. Right. So let's end today's segment with momentum, right? How important is momentum in business, right? PJ, how important is it to get small wins, right? Small victories.
Yeah, I mean, it's very important. Like getting my first client was very big for me because it showed me that like you are offering something that has value, and there is somebody there that sees the value,
validity,
and right, and it's confidence, and it's just it just kind of validates. You're like, all right, like just don't stop doing this just because you're not hitting home runs every week. So that momentum is like, how do you carry that? So here's my thought process, right? And I've done this my whole life. I've built everything that I've ever done was usually based off of relationships, but building a relationship is still a mindset, or you could call it a skill. It's a desire, right? So every time I meet somebody or I talk to somebody, I'm not automatically thinking, well, what can they do for me or what can I do for them? It's just like, maybe I'll learn something from them. Maybe they'll learn something from me. Maybe they just need somebody to talk. Like, what's the downfall of it, right? So, you create these relationships, and then that just, gives momentum in different areas from there. So I parlayed that into saying, all right, when I build something, like when I get a client, I did this with my training business. I didn't necessarily go and spend a whole bunch of money, like advertising or doing a lot of social media, like output. It was more like, do a really good job with this client and they're going to go tell people. Right. So like, that's the momentum that I create is I have this client and I'm going to do a very good job. I'm going to do the best job I can. I'm going to make them feel like they're the only client I have. And like, that's a skill that Blaise had to master. That's a skill that nurses and healthcare providers have to master, because when Blaise has a client, right, that he's selling a mortgage to, it's the most important thing to them in their life. I know I bought 2 houses from Blaise, right? So it's the most important thing to me. So when I call, he needs to answer, but he might have 10 people at once that when they call, he needs to answer. So like being able to handle that and I hope I get to that point where I have 10 clients calling me all at once, but like, I know already I'm set that I have to answer. I have to make them feel like they don't care who else I have, right? It's about them.
Beautiful.
So like, that's how I create that momentum, is because I know if I do well there and I make a difference, they're going to go tell somebody. That's awesome. Maybe they have another plant or another business, or they have a friend that's in the same bit. Like, it's just going to open up doors. So like, that's kind of the way that I approach that.
Yeah, awesome. I got to be honest with you. That's the best thing that you could say, right? I do the same thing. And I subliminally, I tell every client that, listen, and this is no BS, my goal is to do such a good job for you that you're my free salesperson. Mm-hmm. And listen, probably half of them forget that I say it, but the half that don't, that impact is like, okay, yeah. And you know how many referrals we get from that? And just making them feel important and just doing the right thing, right? It's like, feel like, how do you, like, when I worked for Finance America, 3,000 employees, I was the #1 sales guy for the last 7 or 8 years. How do you do it? Easy. I answer the phone when I don't want to.
All the time.
I am honest with people, and I underpromise and overdeliver every single time. And I don't care if you're making widgets, training people, personal finance, mortgages, selling cannabis. If you have that mindset, you'll be successful.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Right. So now we have a few minutes left. Right. So PJ, I want you to represent every small business. Okay. Blaise, we're going to go into what we call the bridge quick fire. Right? Quick questions. You're looking at PJ. PJ represents every small business out there that is listening to us today. I'm going to ask you 3 quick questions, and we're just going to snap out answers. All right. And we'll end the show this way. What is the biggest vision killer in modern business today?
Not executing baby goals, right? Not taking micro steps to get to a macro goal.
Beautiful, right? If someone is stuck in the planning phase right now, what is the one thing they should do in the next 24 hours?
Get uncomfortable, right? Get uncomfortable. Uncomfortableness will push you out of that planning phase into the next phase.
Awesome. And the last one is a vision ever fully finished, or is it permanent state of motion?
Permanent state of motion, 100%. Like, you could think that your vision is completed, and I promise once you think that, it's going to change and it's going to adapt. It's like a plant. You got to nurture it and grow it and feed it and water it and give it light and give it love. And no matter what business you are, if you do that, you'll always kill it.
This is awesome. Awesome time here. It's time to end the show. This was great, and we'll have Blaise back on in different aspects during the year, and PJ. Right, we're going to show PJ from now to, I know at the end of the year he's going to be
the growth.
He's going to be on the other side.
Sit on that side.
He's going to be on the other side.
And honestly,
Absolutely.
I got some ideas for you. We'll connect later.
Absolutely.
And
that's
just sitting across from you, hearing it,
and that's the bridge.
Gets
right?
my brain going. Of man, I got some ideas that I can help you.
Nice.
That is awesome, man. Right. Cool. So Blaise, where can the people find you? Right.
Yeah, I'm easy to find. You Google Blaise Menzoni, I'll pop up all over. But I'm at 1120 East Landis Avenue, probably 50 to 60 hours a week, which is Nation One's office. Available on cell 856-297-7087. The office is 856-692-9494. And if you don't think anything about getting a mortgage, but you've watched this podcast, you have any questions, personal finance, budgeting, literally anything at all, call me. I'm here. I love giving back to this community. Like PJ said, I could live anywhere. I choose to live here. I love it here. My kids live here. My family's here. My business is here. My life is here. And I've chosen that. And, a lot of people leave Vineland when they become successful. And to me, I'm like, listen, it's great. I can understand that. There's places with better places to eat and more fun stuff to do. But this is home. The people of this area have made me who I am. And, it's more than my duty. It's my responsibility to pour back and help however I can. So if you're watching this and there's anything that you think I could do to help you, call me, please. I encourage it.
Awesome. And PJ, thank you. Thank you for being here. And you're representing every new business out there. What's one takeaway from today?
I think that the takeaway is like, where you start obviously is not where you're going to finish. Mm-hmm. But you have to embrace that process along the way. So I named my company, ETP Consulting. ETP stands for Embrace the Process. So I have to take my own advice. I have to embrace this process because I think, like, Blaise said, goals change, the goalpost moves, and it should, right? But the process, if the process is the same, then you could be successful, and you should be successful in any sector that you enter, any endeavor that you take on. So like I really just I encourage anyone who's listening who wants to start a new business, or even if it's you want to start a workout program, or you want to start just being a better spouse or parent or sibling or child or whatever it is that you're doing, student. Right? Like, think about a process and a system that doesn't change, and just, chase the system, chase
Beautiful.
The process. Don't just chase the goal. Because I think if you focus in on that part of it, then like, what happens when you get there, mm-hmm. right? And then maybe you got there by luck. So like, I want to do it the right way. I want to do it the way Blaise did it. And, so I just encourage everyone who's listening, just think about that, find out what your purpose is, and then turn that purpose, into process.
Absolutely.
And as long as you're not the 76ers, the process won't take that long.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it will work.
Yes. And for those of you that listen, take a look at your calendar and your bank statements this week. If they don't reflect the vision you're preaching, then it's time to shift gears, right? Until next time, keep your eyes on the horizon, but keep your feet and your finances moving on the ground. I'm Cruz Gomez, and this is the Bridge Podcast. We'll see you on the next one.